Board of Selectmen's meeting for Thursday, January 14th, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, section 18. This public meeting of the Town of Bolton Board of Selectmen is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but the public can access this meeting while in progress by Zoom video communications. So guidelines, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. And earlier this week, we discovered that there's two versions of Zoom out there right now. The old one, you would go to the participants column, and at the lower right would be some dots, and you would press those dots and have the option to raise your hand. In the latest version of Zoom, there is a button in the middle of your screen that says reactions, and the raise hand button is in there. So I'm just trying to save everyone the frustration I had the other night where I spent an hour looking for the raise hand button. First on our agenda for tonight is the revised host community agreement with Lovecraft for the marijuana facility at 58 Main Street. Following last Selectmen's meeting, there were some changes made to the proposed host community agreement, which were then sent over to Lovecraft. There have been discussions going on back and forth, but we haven't had a chance to get an opinion on these discussions from our attorney. So we're not going to be in a position to discuss the host community agreement, the revised host community agreement tonight. So we can't, technically we're still in negotiations, so we wouldn't even be able to release it. So I'm sorry that we haven't been able to progress past this point, but that's the situation that we are in this evening. We will not be able to discuss the revised host community agreement. Do any of these selectmen have any questions or comments?
No, I think that's fine. Yeah, I understand the situation we're in, and I think the folks just need to bear with us a bit more until we get that feedback from town council, and we'll take it up. I would assume at a future meeting.
I assume it would be the next meeting, which I think is on the 28th. Is that the correct schedule?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we will go on to the next item on the agenda, which is a discussion and comments related to implementing a vegetative management plan for the town. So I'd like to start off by explaining the reason we're doing this, or the reason I think we should be doing this, in that the vegetation management plan is a document prepared by the town in accordance with the Code of Massachusetts 333, section 11, to describe its plans for controlling hazardous and nuisance vegetation along roadsides. That is the town rights of way on the streets. Through the vegetation management plan, the town also sets the operational parameters for the Conservation Commission and Parks and Recreation for their vegetation control efforts. The town used to have and regularly update the vegetation management plan, but it was discontinued in 2016 when the selectmen rejected the advice of the Director of Public Works and chose not to update it. Since that time, there have been several notable changes along the roadside, which make a vegetation management plan very helpful. The poison ivy has been getting bigger and getting closer to the roadsides. This is particularly a problem where there are stone walls or ledges or trees close to the road, and the mowers can't get close, can't get into it. It's especially troubling seeing parents pushing toddlers during these COVID confined times up and down the street and they're unable to get off the pavement completely when a car's approach because of poison ivy at the edge of the road. Also affected are the play areas at Florence Sawyer School and the wooded area behind Memorial Field, where bittersweet is smothering the growth of young native shrubs and trees. A new problem and a growing problem in town is that of what's called Japanese knotweed, which has become established in multiple places around town and threatens to crowd out native plants in low-lying areas along roads and along stream banks. People in town should be able to walk safely along the road in those areas that do not have sidewalks, and the vegetation management plan allows that to continue. There is nothing in this plan which directs anybody to use chemicals to address invasive or nuisance plants. It simply describes the parameters limiting the use of herbicides. Herbicides are the remedy of last resort when dealing with nuisance or problem vegetation. Other towns with notable public spaces also have vegetation management plans, and so should Bolton. So with that, who else would like to, what other selectmen would like to say something about the plan?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I mean, I think I do support your comments. I do support the fact that we should have a vegetative management plan. And the plan that was presented to us by the DPW director, I found to be sufficient. And certainly in your comments, herbicides is the sort of the last resort, the last step in the plan. I reviewed it again today, and it relies heavily on cutting and management in other areas, and herbicides are the last resort. So I have no issues with the plan as has been presented, as I have had in the past, and I support your comments.
Okay, Jonathan?
So the document we have before us has been edited since the last meeting.
We were looking to receive comments from the public as well. So I believe my takeaway from the last meeting was you would be submitting your comments, which you did, and they've been shared with the board. We've received other comments from the public that have also been shared with the board. And my assumption was that tonight the board would be discussing in total the comments that have been received. I think, not including you, Jonathan, I think we had 4 people send in comments. Also, just to clarify one thing, Randy Heglin, our new DPW director, really has not put his stamp on this. He's had a lot of things to attend to, and the thinking was we would see what comments came in tonight, and then whatever form the document ends up in, Randy could comment at that point. So he has not weighed in with his final comments either. I just wanted to make that clear that I made it clear to him that he didn't need to get them in for tonight.
Right. Yeah, so I agree that it is important to have a vegetative management plan in place, especially if we're going to be using herbicides. We need, as a community, to know when and where they're going to be used in advance. And I see that that is in this plan, that notices will be published at least 48 hours ahead of any spraying. So I think that's a good safeguard. And I think it is important, we're discovering that a lot of herbicides and pesticides are used on our playing fields and our parks, at the town common. This is just coming out in the last year. So it's really good to get all of this out in the open. I do think we need to follow up with the school and make sure that they are also filing a plan as well. That's kind of in my reading of the language for this that the school should have a plan, as well as Parks and Rec and Conservation Commission.
Well,
I just want to say,
the
in the
plan
in the
itself.
preamble, it talks about 5 to 7 gallons of chemicals being used historically a year. I hope we can take that out, or not use that as a measurement for future use. That's a lot, if we're talking about Roundup. What were you saying, Bob?
Well, I just want to clarify that this document is strictly about the roadsides, managing the rights of way. And insofar as it affects the other departments, Parks and Recs and Conservation, it again provides the broad outlines of what the town's willing to do, but they've got a different set of parameters that they have to deal with, as opposed to a similar vegetation plan like what we're discussing tonight.
Yeah, I'd like to see Conservation Commission, Parks and Rec, and the school working with the DPW, so it's coordinated. There's a lot of overlap. We have roads in the school campus. We
Okay,
have conservation areas near the school, so it all overlaps.
okay.
Well, actually, that brings up a good point. Shouldn't the overarching vegetative management plan be the one that's coming from the DPW, rather than Park and Rec having a separate vegetative management plan? We shouldn't have different and disparate plans.
Well,
There should be one
What
plan.
they would have would be more along the lines of the yearly operational plan, which is, and that's not something they need to file with the state. But they would have the yearly operational plan, which says this year, these are the things we want to accomplish. As opposed to, they aren't going to have, there's two parts to this. There's the vegetation management plan, which we're discussing tonight. And then following this, the DPW will do a yearly operational plan based on the parameters that we set within the vegetative management plan. So for example, although they weren't bound by it, my understanding was that in 2016, the use of herbicides stopped in all over town because the sentiment was the town, through the vegetation management plan, had declined to do it anymore. But the other departments weren't really bound by that decision. It was just, the sense of the community was don't do it.
That's fine, but we should have a plan, not multiple plans. That's all I'm saying. When it comes to vegetative management.
Well,
Because at the end of the day, these are town properties.
right. But I don't know how DPW is going to decide what should be done in the conservation areas or in Parks and Recs. And they have the option, if they have the budget, to go out and hire someone to do it. Obviously, that it would have to be someone who's certified.
Well, but at the very least, properties that are controlled by Park and Rec or overseen by Park and Rec, I can understand perhaps conservation might be a little bit different. But things like the town common and the playing fields, there shouldn't be two disparate plans. It should be one plan.
Conservation has actually weighed in on this plan. We've received their comments.
Okay, good.
I mean, and I talked with the chairman of Parks and Recs, and they have no issue with it. It's on their agenda for this week, but my understanding is that is to discuss what specifically do we want to accomplish as in a vegetation plan this year.
Okay, that's great. Okay, that sounds fine. that
Yeah,
works.
I'd just like to see a coordination of the yearly management plans or the operation plan, the YOPS, between Parks and Rec, Conservation Commission, and the DPW. So they can come up with their plans separately, but at some point they should meet and kind of review
Sure. Okay.
to look for overlaps.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
And then one other thing, Randy, so Randy's gonna work, he's gonna go over this and put his stamp on it. So I just like to see a list, of the chemicals on this. I think on the previous one, it looked like there were 21. Maybe that was like from, the previous plan, but I just like to get that list kind of down to something manageable. So really what you're gonna use, and not kind of every herbicide that's out there. Does that make sense, Randy?
Yeah, it does. I think the list that was included previously was basically a list of acceptable or approved herbicides on the state's DEP's website. I think they correspond, the same. I was actually looking at that today, and I had the same opinion, because I mean, they're all words about this long that scare everybody, and I think it's better if we can just limit it to one or two.
Yeah.
One or two potential chemicals,
Okay.
if we even use any at all. As
Right.
mentioned, it is only as an avenue of last resort for the department. We're going to utilize other means, and I think, as I mentioned in the last meeting as well, that it's just another tool in our toolbox that we can pull out if we need to. I also was looking at the notice requirements, and I think 48 hours may be a little bit short. I mean, if we know of a specific area that's going to be done, we could still do the 24-hour notice or the 48-hour notice, but perhaps do a pinpointed code red or something to those properties that would be in the area that we'd be doing the treating. So we get more of a direct for those people that don't see the paper or don't check the website or aren't subscribed to the notices from the town. If we do a reverse 911 through code red for those particular properties, I think that's would be an effective notification mechanism that we could utilize. And I do want to say, Selectman Keep, I very much appreciate the comments you sent along. I'm still kind of going through them and digesting them, and my intent, my hope is to get a better document to the board for your next meeting, and maybe two versions. One is a marked up version, and one is a final version, but both being the same, so you can see perhaps where the changes are in the document.
Okay. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
We're cruising along here. The town administrator report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to continue the cruise. First tonight, our COVID-19 update. We have the latest numbers. As you know, last week we entered the red category, unfortunately, and the last positive test rate, the last rolling 14-day positive test rate that I had seen was 4.5%. And we had 25 cases, I believe it was, over those 2 weeks. Tonight, I can report to you that over the past 2 weeks, we have 15 cases. So we have dropped from the red category to the yellow category. If we had one more negative, one less positive case, we would actually be green. So we're on the threshold there. And the positivity test rate over the past 14 days for Bolton is 3.27%. So the positive testing is coming down significantly as well. Just so you know, our neighbors, Hudson is red, Lancaster is red, Stowe is red, Berlin is red, Harvard is green, and Clinton is red. And just by contrast, and I'm not picking on Clinton by any stretch, but Clinton over the past 2 weeks, much larger community, but they have 138 new positives over the past 2 weeks. and their positivity testing rate is 14.97%.
Wow.
So one town over that's pretty significant, I would say.
Mhm.
Aside from that, as you know, the town hall is still by appointment only. We'll be doing that for the foreseeable future until we get down to a reasonable level. People have been very good about filling out the contact tracing paperwork and having their temperature taken. We've had no issues with that whatsoever. People appreciate it. So I'd like to thank the public for their cooperation. The other thing I have for tonight is an update on the Cadet EMT program, which I have nothing to add to the report that I sent to the Selectmen recently, but just for the public, the fire department and the cadets are working on the submission of the new waiver to OEMS, where we will be looking to get the waiver specifically for the age restriction for certification. What we had in the old waiver, which was not renewed, was that we had two things. One, since we were doing basic life support service, the cadet EMT counted as a crew member, and we needed to have two people on the response team, and we could count the cadet EMTs. Now that we've gone to advanced life support, or ALS, that would no longer hold true. That person does not count as a crew member. So they can go as a third person in the vehicle, and they can assist on certain things, but they can't count towards staff. And we never challenged that. We accepted that right from the beginning, that now that we are an ALS service, that the rules have changed, and that's fine. But what we are seeking the waiver for is the students in the program frequently are ready to take their certification exam prior to the age of 18. They could be 17, 16 and a half, theoretically even 16, as long as they're able to pass the exam. That's been the important thing. And the state said, no, we're enforcing 18 as the age limit, and we had a lengthy discussion about that. The state understands our position. We understand theirs. We're submitting the waiver. And as a point of reference, 3 years ago, when we had this challenge, when the national standard was 18 years old, now the national standard is 16. So it's come down, and we're seeking to be held to the same standard as the national standard. So we're highly optimistic that our waiver is going to be approved. We'll have it in by the end of the month, plus or minus a couple of days. And I think the state will be fairly responsive in turning it around. The other part that I just wanted to emphasize again was every cadet we had in the pipeline that had gone through the training, but had not yet taken their exam because they weren't yet 18, has been grandfathered. And all that were in the pipeline will be allowed to take their certification exams before being 18. So that was a huge win for us, and we appreciated OEMS's flexibility on that. So aside from that, that's really all I have for this evening, unless the board has any questions.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. So are fire, EMT, and police, are they all getting their COVID shots this week, or?
They're getting scheduled.
Okay.
Our fire chief was one of the very first. He was very quick to get on there, but yes, we're making arrangements. Yes, absolutely we are.
And that includes the student EMTs?
It would.
The cadets? Oh, good.
It would, if they're going to be on calls, they're first responders.
Good.
We're hopeful that the other town employees who are not considered to be first responders, but still essential workers, which would be DPW, town hall, the other town employees, as well as the teachers. We're in the same category as the teachers. We're hoping those vaccinations can take place in February. And the chief is working on that.
Great.
So that's all I have, unless there are any questions.
Thank you, Don.
Next on the agenda is Board of Selectmen business. Are there any public service announcements?
I have nothing tonight.
All right. I would like to take this opportunity to announce that I'm going to be running for re-election to the Board of Selectmen. It's been an honor and a privilege to serve my community these past 4 years. We've been fiscally conservative, innovative in financial and management issues, and keeping the town moving forward. I look forward to serving the town for another term. Thank you. Discussion on changing the official name of the Board of Selectmen to the Select Board or something similar. What I would, if the selectmen are amenable to this, I would suggest asking the town administrator to follow up on some discussions he's had with other officials from other towns that have made changes like this and put together a warrant article to change the name of the Board of Selectmen to, again, Select Board or something similar. There would be a financial cost to this. It'd be between $3,000 and $5,000. And so it would have to be taken into account for purposes of managing the budget. But comments, reaction?
So the expense is related to stationery or?
It's mostly related to the fact that we have a firm that manages, retains and, how do I want to say it, edits and manages the way our bylaws are stored, and they have to go in. And it would just not only be changing the name of the Board of Selectmen, but every place where the chairman of the board is mentioned, that name would probably have to be changed too. So it's mostly to cover the expense of going in and actually changing the bylaws.
And this is something that you have brought up yourself. You have not gotten any citizen comment or request to do this?
That's a fair statement. Surrounding towns have done it. Other surrounding towns are considering it. I think it's appropriate, and so I'm bringing it before the board for consideration.
I mean, in one sense, I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but I do have a problem with the fact that there's an expense of between $3,000 and $5,000. And as we have been opining for the last year, actually several years, that we're having issues with the budget, and I think this year we're going to have a significant issue with the budget. I don't see that this is a priority that the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator need to undertake at this point in time, especially when we're talking about $3 to $5 grand. If you have been monitoring the Bolton community Facebook page, there has been a lot of recent chatter about their taxes. And yet again, we need to do more education on how things are getting spent. I also came across an article, it was December 13, 2017, about Board of Selectmen or Select Board, and it goes through a whole bunch of stuff. But I guess, the last line of the thing is, and I'm just taking somewhat out of context, but our opportunities to discuss policy and issues as a board are limited right now. I feel that we have so many other important items that the board needs to focus on. And that was sort of the end point of that article. If you look, there are still towns that are selectmen, or some towns select boards. It's been around for a long time. So while I think it's something we should do, I don't think it's something that the townsfolk are going to appreciate when they're concerned about spending money, that we need to be spending $3 to $5 grand right now to be doing this. And I think, perhaps we should wait for a little bit better.
You froze, Stan.
So would we need to draft the article
That's just
for
my
the
opinion.
money or for the name change, Bob?
Both. It'd be one article that incorporated both.
Mhm. I think it's a good idea. If, if finances is the big issue, maybe we can budget it for next year. I don't know.
Well, I'm the one that brought up the budget aspect of it, and I attended the advisory committee meeting last week.
Mhm.
There's a lot of work to be done. And as I said, this may not fit in, but it's just early in the process. And I'd hate to get to the end of the process and see that there's an opportunity to do this and that we weren't ready for it. So that's why I'm asking for the selectmen to authorize Don to start preparing a warrant article for this.
Well, I would support that. And we can see how things come out. We do our final edits and we can see then.
Right. So,
I support that.
I don't.
okay.
I've done some initial research, so I'm not concerned about being able to pull together wording for the board's review. I think probably my goal is the first meeting in February, we will have a draft, the initial first draft warrant for the board to walk through. Jenny and I need to assemble one, and then I'd really like to get council's first pass on it before I put the details in front of the board, but we can get you an outline at least by the first meeting in February, so you can see what we're looking at.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Could I have a motion asking authorizing the town administrator or asking the town administrator to prepare a warrant article?
So moved.
I'll second that. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay,
Roll call. Waisaki,
nay,
Keep,
Aye.
Sikansky.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is the Neshoba Regional School District Audit Committee. This is a committee that is part of the regional agreement. Bolton has not had a representative on the committee for a couple of years. And I'm asking if the selectmen would like to have the town administrator prepare an advertisement and seek candidates in order to fulfill this position.
I think that's
Yes.
fine, absolutely.
Don?
Bob, just to clarify one thing, it isn't that Bolton hasn't had a representative on the committee for a couple of years. The committee hasn't met for a couple of years. Back in September, actually September 13th, I believe it was, 2018, the Board of Selectmen and the Advisory Committee voted jointly to appoint Dave Yezway as our representative to replace Heather Hughes. Dave has indicated that after his appointment, he and others attempted to get a meeting organized, but one never took place. So I wanted to make sure that the board knew that that David had been appointed, and I'm not saying we shouldn't be advertising, it's not my point, but we did have a representative, and it was David Yezway. But I guess the efforts reaching out to the school committee representative on the committee to try to get a meeting organized never were fruitful.
Okay, well, I wasn't aware of that, so my apologies to David for not recognizing his service and his commitment to the school district and the town. I apologize for that.
Yeah. I was not aware of that until today myself.
All
So
right. So do I have a motion?
So wait, so Dave's thing has expired, his term?
but there's not really a term limit on it per se, like an elected position. The person is appointed until either they should be reappointed at some point, but So, I mean, you have two options. But normally what the board does is to advertise for interested candidates, and Dave certainly would be welcome, I'm sure, to seek appointment. But since it has been a couple of years, Dave has indicated that he is willing to serve, so I'm sure he would apply for it again. But I just wanted to make that distinction for you, so it was clear.
Okay, I'll make a motion.
Well, wait a minute, let me, this is
Okay.
more news to me now. Because we got an email today calling for candidates to attend a meeting of the audit committee.
That's correct.
So if Dave was appointed and is still willing to serve, can't we just have him continue?
That is your option. Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, Michael Haresh has written.
Okay. Yeah.
So he's, Mike Haresh is saying that we have Dave as a rep, but there's no reps for Stowe and Lancaster in order for them to have a quorum.
Okay.
Or,
Well, we should just decide if we're going to have David continue or if we're going to have someone new, so that Bolton is not part of the problem here.
Well, perhaps we should ask Dave if he wants to continue to serve, and if he was already appointed, and if he does not, then let's advertise.
Well, Dave indicated today that he would be happy to serve as long as there was going to be an active committee. But we could certainly ask him to submit. I mean, he said that today. As I said, I did not honestly remember until today that Dave had been appointed. Actually, Brian Boyle reached out to him, and he indicated that if the committee was going to be active and doing the work, that he would be willing to serve. So that's all I know.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
okay.
If,
I
you know,
am.
we appointed
well,
Dave. Dave did his
Well,
best to
why
try to
don't we
get something
invite
going.
Dave? Why don't we
Yeah.
discuss this again with Dave at the next meeting? Just so we're all on the same page. Can we do
sounds
that,
good.
Don?
So do the audit reps, does there have to be a quorum? Is that a requirement for them?
Yes, it's an established committee and needs to have a quorum. There needs to be at least 3 people to conduct a meeting.
3
Don,
or 2?
Can I ask a question? Who's the driving factor here? Is the school committee the one that's supposed to be getting the audit committee going and getting representatives from the other towns?
It's independent of the school committee. Or it should be.
Well, apparently, the school committee has voted to have Rich Eckel.
The school
As a
committee
school
gets
committee
one
rep.
rep and each town gets 1 rep.
All right, but who's the entity that's controlling getting this thing going? Because if
It
no
should
one
be
has,
4 members.
yeah, but the thing is, if no one has a responsibility to get it going, then it's kind of defeats the purpose.
I don't know how I don't know how the audits have occurred for the past 2 or 3 years.
The impetus for the audit advisory committee is supposed to come from the school committee.
All right, there you go. So it's the school committee that's supposed to be driving it, and for whatever reason, they haven't. So finally, they are now driving it with Rich Eckel. So the school committee needs to drive this thing. If we have Dave as a potential, we want to have him come in and chat with us next week, but we got to get this thing going because it's part of the original agreement that this is supposed to occur on a yearly basis, and apparently hasn't occurred for the last 2. So, and if it's the school committee that's on the hook for this, then they need to get moving.
Okay. All right, so we'll add that to the
So
agenda
this
for next
is
meeting.
Don, this isn't something,
I'm
Pardon
sorry,
me?
Josh, I didn't hear you.
so yeah, sorry, is this something that Don can work on with the other town administrators and their board of selectmen, or it really starts with the school committee?
Well, the timing is really good here because the 3 town administrators have their monthly meeting with the superintendent next Wednesday. So
Great.
I'm sure this will be a discussion point.
Perfect.
Okay,
Okay. Next, I want to have Don lead the discussion on the consideration of the dedication of the annual report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So from time to time in the past, the town of Bolton has dedicated the annual report to a particular citizen who had been active in the town, prominent in the town, but had recently passed and was no longer with us. And recently, the Roger Breeze passed, our local historian. Roger was very active in town, very visible in town, was always very helpful to many people. And the idea was brought up, and I'm not taking credit for it, was not my idea, that perhaps the 2020 annual report could be dedicated to Roger. So that's something that the Board of Selectmen would need to weigh in on.
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it sounds very appropriate.
yeah, if it's been done in the past, that's fine. I have no problem with it.
Okay, could I have a motion?
Make a motion that we dedicate the 2020 Town of Bolton Annual Report to Roger Breeze.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Roll call.
Wasaki,
Aye.
Keep,
Aye.
Sikansky.
Aye.
Thank you.
Approve bills, payroll warrants, W 21-13, 2113A, 21, W 2114, W 2114A, and W 2114 corrected.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor,
Second.
please say aye.
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 Opposed?
Roll call, Wasaki,
Aye.
Keep,
Aye.
Sikansky.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next up, do we have minutes?
I have a set of minutes. I'm not sure if 2 of the selectmen have had a chance to review them. I only got a email back from you.
Well, then they're fine.
I'll leave it up to Mr. Keep and Mr. Wasaki to decide if we would like to do those today, or if you'd like more time, I'm happy to save them for the next meeting.
I would like more time. Unfortunately, I had a death in the family and occupied a bit of my time, so I will get to it for the next meeting.
I'm sorry
Okay.
to hear that.
That's fine. All right. Next, I don't have the little speech written down. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 21A3, we'll be entering into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining for the ASF CME Council Number 33 DPW unit, as the chair finds that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the board's bargaining position, and to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining for the Bolton Police Union Local 286, Massachusetts Coalition of Police, UIPA, AFL-CIO, as the chair finds that an open position may have a detrimental effect on the board's bargaining position. The board will reconvene to open session solely for the purpose of adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of entering executive session, please say aye.
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 Roll call.
Waiting for the opposed question.
Aye.
Roll call, Wasaki,
Aye.
Keep,
Aye.
Sikansky.
Aye.
Give me just a moment. So there are a number of people still in here. I'm going to remove them all
Yeah.
Yeah,
individually.